The epidemic in China is very serious. Many hospitals are overloaded, and many people have fallen. During the Chinese New Year, the epidemic was severe. Hospitals in many places were constantly overcrowded, and people kept dying suddenly. In Chaohu, Anhui, it was reported that many funeral homes in various areas still required people to queue for cremation, but the authorities concealed the epidemic. An employee of a state-owned enterprise in Chaohu City, Anhui Province, who goes by the pseudonym Zhang Wei, revealed that in the past 2 months, many people have been infected with the epidemic and people have been dying suddenly. His mother and son were infected, and no medicine worked. It has been more than 10 days since before the Chinese New Year, and they have not recovered. Zhang Wei, Chaohu City, Anhui Province. Many people have colds, and hospitals are also overcrowded. All serious cases have gone to the city hospital, and the news is being covered up. There are thousands of people in our factory, and people die every day. 2 people in their 40s died last month, and 1 died during the Chinese New Year. There are more elderly people, more than a dozen. In the past 2 months, there have been many sudden deaths, and some were fine but died after a sleep. Zhang Wei also mentioned that the funeral home is about 10 miles away from his home, and there are endless cars going to the funeral home every day. Zhang Wei. On the road leading to the funeral home, funeral music plays every day and it never stops. The chimneys of the crematorium are smoking every day, from early morning to dusk. People have to give red envelopes and queue up, especially since the new crown. In the past 3 or 4 years, people have been dying non-stop, and the crematorium is always smoking. Ms. Xu, a citizen of Yueyang, Hunan, has not recovered from the virus since she was infected before the Chinese New Year. She said that this wave of the epidemic is very serious. The hospital said it was influenza A, but treating it as influenza A hasn't cured it. Ms. Xu, a citizen of Yueyang, Hunan. I have been receiving intravenous fluids since the 28th of the year, and taking a lot of medicine. I haven't recovered yet. It's not easy to treat. There are many people in the hospital. I am in the clinic. The diagnosis of influenza A is not good. It mainly causes cough, headache, and low fever. 1 or 2 of my good friends have passed away, and 1 or 2 people we know have passed away. They are over 60 years old. Hangzhou man infected with influenza developed white lungs in just a few days. Chao News reported that Mr. Liu from Hangzhou, Zhejiang, initially had a slight cough, thinking it was just a common cold, and didn't take it too seriously. After seeing a doctor, he took some common cold medicines, but not only did he feel dizzy and weak, the cough and sputum seemed to worsen. After just a few days, Mr. Liu not only did not recover from his previous symptoms, but he also experienced a gas emergency. He went to the Department of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine of the affiliated hospital of Hangzhou Normal University for an outpatient consultation. The examination results showed that he was infected with severe influenza A, and both lungs had very serious ground glass exudates, which is commonly known as white lungs. Later, Mr. Liu's high fever gradually subsided, and the symptoms of chest tightness and shortness of breath were also relieved. After another chest CT examination, the inflammatory exudates in both lungs were absorbed to varying degrees. Netizens have commented, "COVID-19 is COVID-19. What is H1N1? Zrenia, people's physical fitness has drastically dropped after COVID-19. It's very fast. My son developed pneumonia after a fever for 1 or 2 days. My relative also died of white lung." Some netizens said, "Last month our whole family also had H1N1. Later, I chatted with my younger brother and sister-in-law and learned that the characteristic of this year's H1N1 is that it is easy to turn into pneumonia and even white lung." A 36-year-old doctor in the radiology department of their hospital died because of this. He had a high fever for 2 days, and then developed white lung. He was rescued in his own hospital, a provincial tertiary hospital, and was saved for 7 days with ECMO. Xi'an Morning News reported that at the end of December 2024, 67-year-old Kuzhou native Li Shu began to cough a little, occasionally had some white sputum, and later had a low fever. On the morning of January 5th this year, Uncle Li felt chest tightness, difficulty breathing, and shortness of breath after getting up, so he went to the hospital. The test results showed that his respiratory pathogen nucleic acid test was positive for the influenza A virus, and the chest CT scan revealed multiple infections in both lungs, which was diagnosed as severe pneumonia. People in many places revealed that a new wave of influenza epidemics in the mainland was coming fiercely, and hospital emergency clinics and small clinics were full. Xu Feng, a resident of Dalian, told NTD a few days ago, "I'm hospitalized. My throat hurts and it's burning. Some children have trouble breathing, and no medicine works. For diseases like the new coronavirus, the common people know about it, but they are not allowed to talk about it. The community hospitals are full. There are also quite a lot of people passing away. There are funerals every 2 or 3 days. Several of my neighbors have passed away." Mr. Han, a resident of Linyi village in Shandong, said, "This epidemic is not easy to treat. There are queues at the health centers. The small hospitals in the towns are full. There are long queues for injections. It costs 80 to 100 yuan to get a drip. It takes many days to get it. It's not easy to treat. Several people have died in the village, some in their 40s and 50s, and some in their 50s and 60s.
As China's economy worsens, more and more young people are choosing not to get married. According to official CCP data, the number of marriage registrations in the first half of 2024 was 3.43 million, a year-on-year decrease of 12.7%, setting a new low. Many young people hesitate to get married due to financial pressure. Many women not only require a man to have a house, a car, and savings, but they also emphasize these as essential conditions. The man's high-priced betrothal gift is a traditional Chinese wedding custom. It refers to the money or property that the groom gives to the bride's family upon marriage. On one hand, it expresses his gratitude to the bride's parents for raising their daughter. On the other hand, it signifies his commitment to the marriage. It is important to note that after receiving the betrothal gift, the bride's family is traditionally expected to give a corresponding gift in return, and return part of the original gift. Due to varying economic conditions and customs across different regions of China, the amount returned by the bride's family is not fixed. Today we will discuss the topic of wedding gifts. The gender imbalance in China has made it increasingly difficult for men to find a wife. Reports indicate that in rural areas of Jiangxi, bride prices have risen from 300,000 yuan to 500,000 yuan, making marriage unattainable for some rural young men. However, a Jiangxi-based blogger pointed out that the situation varies across Jiangxi's counties and cities, and in most areas, bride prices are not as exaggerated. As a Jiangxi native, I have noticed that when people hear you are from Jiangxi, their first reaction is often to comment on the high betrothal gifts. Didn't Wang Po visit Shangrao recently and mention that the bride price there was 388,688 yuan? In reality, I feel that betrothal gifts in my surroundings are not that extreme. Most cases involve amounts like 68,888 yuan, 80,000 yuan, or around 100,000 yuan. My husband and I started our business together right after graduation. So when we got married, we gave a symbolic gift of 100,000 yuan. According to customs in Zhejiang, the entire gift was returned to us. Additionally, my parents contributed an extra 20,000 yuan as a dowry. Because we opened a chain store in Jiangxi, we often chat with store clerks across the province. What impressed me most was that betrothal gifts in Guangzhou and Leping were particularly high. A store clerk in Yudu, Guangzhou once told me that the bride price there starts at 200,000 yuan. Generally, if the money is given to the woman, she will not return it because she has younger brothers at home, and the bride price is almost entirely given to them. In return, the groom's family may receive a few quilts or between 10,000 and 30,000 yuan. Regarding the bride price, this gentleman believes that mutual understanding is essential. A moderate amount is reasonable, After all, while 100,000 or 200,000 yuan can't buy a luxury car, it can help secure a marriage. A woman will give birth to your children and cook for you, so giving her a bride price is a way to show sincerity. If a man cannot afford it, he simply won't marry her. After all, he himself has value. He may seek a marriage arrangement with a lower bride price. In his opinion, the bride price should be seen as a gesture of commitment and reassurance rather than a rigid transaction. Sometimes, if there is genuine affection in a relationship, there is no need to bargain excessively over the bride price. The real regret comes from relationships that last for years, but ultimately break down because of disputes over money or housing. In China and other Asian countries, bride prices are a deeply rooted cultural tradition, but Westerners often struggle to understand this practice. A few days ago, the WeChat public account British Uncle posted a story about a 33-year-old Chinese woman named Zhang who is studying for a PhD in Rotterdam, Netherlands. In March last year, she discovered she was pregnant and asked her Dutch boyfriend to marry her. Initially, he was thrilled and began planning the wedding with her. However, when she asked him to pay a bride price of 88,000 euros, everything changed. For the Dutch boyfriend, 88,000 euros was an enormous sum, roughly equivalent to an average person's annual salary. In the Netherlands, there is no tradition of bride prices, and many people consider demanding money in exchange for marriage akin to fraud. Shocked, he began to question whether Zhang was taking advantage of his feelings, even suspecting that it might be a premeditated scam. In the end, he reported the incident to the police. Zhang was detained and the court sentenced her to 6 months in prison, followed by deportation. According to netizens, Zhang had been married before moving abroad. At that time, she had demanded a bride price of 660,000 yuan. However, her marriage fell apart due to prolonged separation. This time, her demand for 88,000 euros scared off her boyfriend, ultimately leading to her deportation. Under European and American laws, requesting financial gifts as a condition for marriage or pregnancy is generally classified as fraud. During the Chinese New Year, many young people working in other cities return to their hometowns to celebrate. Although they are happy to reunite with their families, older singles often have to endure their parents' relentless pressure to get married. A few days ago, I flew back from the UK, thinking that my family would be happy to see me return to the village for the new year. But to my surprise, my dad said, "If you're still single next year, don't bother coming back for the new year." Now, I finally understand why so many older young people hesitate to return home for the holidays. The moment you step through the door, relatives and family members either criticize you or act condescendingly. They believe that if you're in your 30s and still unmarried, something must be wrong with you. But who decided that marriage before 30 is mandatory? Podcaster Jillian once said that parents and young people have completely different perspectives on being single. The key takeaway is, never try to prove to your parents how happy you are as a single person. In their eyes, if you're unmarried, staying home during the holidays, eating whatever you want, or traveling alone, that's loneliness. But if you're married, running around attending family gatherings, doing endless housework, and preparing countless New Year's Eve dinners, that's happiness. How do you even argue with that logic? Surveys show that many people avoid marriage because of its high costs. Women often expect their husbands to buy a house before marriage. However, with the economy in decline, many workers simply can't afford skyrocketing home prices on their limited salaries, making marriage a daunting prospect. In the West, this issue is far less common. Some question whether many Chinese women are overly materialistic. Analysts believe this is partly because Western cultures lack the custom of betrothal gifts. More importantly, China's past one-child and family planning policies, enforced by the CCP, have led to a severe gender imbalance. Social pressure and a conformity mindset have further driven up the cost of marriage, making it increasingly difficult for young men to find a spouse. Moreover, the demand for high bride prices is a byproduct of the CCP system. In the West, social welfare is better, wages are generally higher, and education, healthcare, and social security systems are well developed. As a result, ordinary women can still live secure and dignified lives without feeling the need to marry up for financial stability. In contrast, life in China is far more uncertain. Under financial pressure, some women become more selective and demand exorbitant bride prices. Ironically, in economically underdeveloped regions, bride prices tend to be even higher. While a bride price is meant to serve as startup capital for a couple's new life, setting it too high is simply impractical.